It's the Weekly Wrap with your host, broadcasting legend Bruce Wolf, and his trusty sidekick, comedian Tim Slagle. And now, without further ado, Bruce Wolf.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap. And now it's time for my favorite part of the show, where I guess what is in Tim's background today. I mean, other than membership in really wacko organizations, but hey, he's part of this show. So, what's in his background? I'm going to say it's just that classic photo. Maybe I'm just imagining it, of Hunter Biden coked out with a gun, and he's about to dispose it in some trash bin next to a school, standing next to a hooker. Am I right about that? Or
you are not right. I got
okay.
Barbie fever.
Ah, there you go. And for those of you who aren't watching this, Tim is sitting there with a pink Pepto-Bismol behind him. Because did you actually see Barbie the movie? I know we're going to talk about it later, but
I did not.
Yeah, neither did I. So we're really going to be qualified to talk about it. But yeah, it's all pretty in pink, and you look pretty in pink as well. This, just out of curiosity, Pepto-Bismol is does that actually work? I mean, I used to take it. I used to try to give it to my wife. I don't.
It always has for me.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, it saved my life a number of times. Because you can't, when you're on stage, you can't say, "Oh, excuse me," for about 2 minutes. I really have an urgency.
You start guzzling. See, I thought it was like placebo-bismol. I mean, it didn't really do anything, but it does. Okay, all right.
You probably have severe issues then.
Well, I mean, I've used Tums, but I also think that's just like candy as well.
Oh, that's an antacid. That's different.
Oh, okay.
Pepto-Bismol is supposed to work as an antacid. I've never had any luck.
I don't really know the difference. And now, I mean, I'm not qualified as an expert in either stand-up comedy or what to do when you've got, an emergency situation in a stand-up comedy.
Pepto-Bismol is for nausea or diarrhea.
Oh, okay.
I found it to work.
All right. Well, anyway, the reason I guessed Hunter Biden is because there was this plea deal that blew up. We're recording this on Thursday. It blew up yesterday in court. I'm happy to report that if you don't understand exactly what happened, then you're not alone, because just about everybody in the world, including the judge and the prosecution and the defense, as well as experts such as Andy McCarthy, whom, I drop his name. I do know him. I do know Andy, and I saw he had an article in the New York Post about it. He's got an article in National Review, and he was on the Commentary podcast today. And John Podhoretz is a pretty smart guy, and he said, "Andy, I mean, I really don't understand this." And McCarthy said, "You know what? I don't either, because it's kind of unprecedented. I mean, you have what should have been rubber stamped. It was a plea deal between the prosecution and the defense, and then the judge." And my theory, and you'll love my tinfoil hat being put on right now, is that Trump. This is a Trump-appointed judge, federal judge Mary Ellen Noreika. I think Trump made another perfect phone call. I think he called the judge and suggested that she blow up the deal. I mean, I guess one way of attacking this is that you can't give a guy immunity, this sweeping immunity from further prosecution, and then contend that you're still conducting an investigation into what he's doing, which could wind up getting him prosecuted. I mean, that's a Venn diagram that has nothing in the middle except the bottle of Pepto-Bismol, because I got nausea from it. But your view.
They wanted it both ways. They wanted to be able to keep everything from Congress, and they wanted to be able to give him, let him off easy. I think my tinfoil hat, I don't think Trump called her. I think she just watched the news.
Well, I mean, she's.
I think she strayed from the mainstream networks, and she might have watched a little Newsmax, maybe,
or something, or studied the Constitution, studied the law, and realized, oh yeah, I'm going to adhere to it here. I mean, he could have gotten this gun case. Saying, oh, it's just, we don't prosecute gun cases so often. No, we do prosecute them when you're a drug guy, when you're a drug addict, and when you're caught dumping the gun next to a school. And you can get a few years for that. and they give him this diversion program on it. And then they also, all they charged him with, and there is no indictment in this case, which is also makes it difficult. But there were 2 misdemeanor tax charges. Well, that's not what they really could have gotten him on. He took in like $10 million or $11 million in income. And
sure.
Yeah.
But the gun check, there was at least he lied on a federal form to get the gun, and then he carried it into a gun-free zone. I mean, right there, that's 2 biggies right there.
Well, and he's got, well, he lied because, I mean, he's a drug guy, and that supposedly is something that the Biden administration, all the liberals want prosecuted, except of course when it's their own. I get that.
Maybe the judge knew whose cocaine it was found in the White House. Maybe a Secret Service agent gave her a call and said, because I understand part of his release, he has to have regular drug tests now.
Right, it's a diversion Right, sure, and
so
we're going to follow up on that.
So he's going to have Secret Service peeing in a cup for him.
Yeah, I thought, I would strongly suggest that Hunter get Kevin Spacey's attorney. And that's all I got to say, because that guy was found not guilty. So meantime,
guilt implies remorse.
Right. So there's this, the name Zlochevsky. I want to know how deep you're into this. This is the Burisma guy. Okay. And Burisma is the Ukrainian company. He told the FBI informant that he'd not only spoken directly with both Joe and Hunter, but had also paid them $5 million each in bribes in order to pressure the Ukrainian government to back off from prosecuting him. Now, that's certainly worth investigating there. And
you can't really trust those Ukrainians, can you?
Well, that's true. They're quite corrupt. I'm just, I don't think this stuff is going to go away, and it would behoove the Republicans, if they had any sense, maybe to nominate somebody who doesn't have about 4 or 5 indictments of his own. I think the next one is going to be coming from Georgia, if it's coming down the pike. But there's no knocking
the find the votes. Which,
there's that one.
That only sounds like a crime if you're in a gangster film,
Well, I mean, that was a perfect phone call too by Trump.
If you say it with a Jersey accent, it definitely sounds like a crime.
No, I mean,
otherwise, find the votes means look in the trunk of a car. They always find votes in the trunk of a car, don't they?
No, I agree with you on that. I mean, the problem is nobody seems to be stepping up to defeat Trump. DeSantis is being criticized now because he seems to be trying to go after, the hardcore Trump voters, and that's not working. I mean, maybe there's research that says that that's what he's got to do in order to get himself over the hump. But aren't there other issues that Republicans care about, like inflation or the economy? Because whatever it is, it's not working. And I know DeSantis supposedly, fired 40% of his staff, but it doesn't seem like he's changing the message. I mean, is anybody going to give Trump a run for his money?
It doesn't seem so. I mean, Trump has a base that isn't necessarily Republican, and it's definitely not Democrat. So I mean, nobody else can have that base. If it wasn't for Trump, the Republicans would have lost the last 2 elections miserably. They would have made McCain and Romney look like stars. In the past 2 elections.
Right. They would have lost with dignity. I right. I remember. After 2012, good old fashioned conservatives like myself saying, well, we got to find ways to appeal to the middle class, because, a guy like Romney with Bain Capital throwing people out of work, heartless,
putting his dog on the roof of his car.
Sure. Binders.
Don't forget about sister grandmas, all his sister grandmas.
Oh, sure. So, yeah. So right, that's a loser thing too. So it's, But the only thing the best thing that Republicans have going for them is that, maybe Biden collapses, and then who do the Democrats have? I mean, they don't really have anybody, right? And it's not RFK Jr. DeSantis actually said that he was going to he would actually consider RFK Jr. for like the CDC or one of those health agencies.
That would be fun. Actually, if he promised Trump to be Attorney General, I think that might be a winning strategy.
No, I would like Trump.
Promises he'll pardon Trump for all his crimes and nominate him as Attorney General.
Well, that would be something if DeSantis made Trump the Attorney General, and then Trump had to prosecute himself, kind of like Woody Allen did, I think, in Bananas, where he's cross-examining himself and getting on and off the stand the entire time. That's always a possibility there. All right, well, we'll explore. I don't know how much more we're going to be able to take of politics. I know that at some point we're going to do a freeze frame of Mitch McConnell here, but we'll get to all that. Bruce Wolf and Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap.
Kamala Harris is fighting back against new standards for teaching Black history in Florida. The new curriculum includes instruction on how enslaved people benefited from the skills they learned. And in early grades, it focuses more on achievements by African Americans than the injustices they faced.
You dare to push propaganda to our children. This is the United States of America. We're not supposed to do that.
Florida's Republican Governor Ron DeSantis has accused the Biden administration of being, quote, obsessed with his state while ignoring other problems.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap. Yeah, I guess Kamala, I mean, I guess her sentences did parse there, so that's an improvement. Yeah, boy, they're really trying to vivisect Florida.
It's amazing to me the things that Republicans are accused of saying that they've never said, and
Right.
and how it becomes conventional wisdom that they said these things. I mean, it started with Sarah Palin's "I can see Russia from my house."
Right. It was Tina Fey who said that. Okay.
Yeah, and then through the Marjorie Taylor Greene's Jewish space lasers. Then we've got Don't Say Gay, the Don't Say Gay bill. And
Right.
now it's
Right.
slavery. Slavery teaches important skills.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, it is true that it happened. Doesn't mean it's not a recommendation for slavery, though. And, if you look at the totality of the circumstances, heck, when I was going to grade school and high school, we learned that slavery was bad and awful. We memorized the Gettysburg Address and everything. We didn't really get into all the details, as I remember, of slavery. I mean, maybe we cover, like 18 paragraphs or something like that. It sounds like when I read about this curriculum that it really goes into detail on what the slaves had to go through, and it's all good. And in the process of mentioning it, that it does say, okay, they got to learn these skills. It doesn't mean they recommended slavery. So Greg Gutfeld, whom I don't have much sympathy for because he makes millions of dollars a year basically doing what we try to do. Okay. And but he apparently had talked about the Holocaust and how, there were survival skills or something like that that people got. He didn't bring it up, but one of the panelists said, would you say the same thing about the Holocaust? And he actually quoted Viktor Frankl's book, The Man's Search for Meaning. And I've read that book about 6 or 7 times. It's one of the most inspirational books I've ever read, because this is a guy who lost his entire family to the Holocaust, and he was in Auschwitz, and he learned how to cope and how to survive. And basically his lesson was if a man can find just a reason to live, he can undergo any kind of duress. Any kind of how he can handle, as long as there is a why. And, he even told about how, like, there were doctors with him in the concentration camp who fooled themselves. They said, we're going to be liberated like in 4 months. And I can take it until if we get liberated in 4 months, I can handle it till then. And then sure enough, 4 months pass and they're not liberated. And this doctor dies. The official cause is typhus, but basically it lost hope. Within a few months after that, they actually were liberated. And Frankel goes through this and explains all these skills that that he learned under duress. And that's all that Gutfeld was saying. But then I see these stories about how Fox staffers are saying, oh, he'd be fired if he were anywhere. Yeah, I guess he'd be fired because he's not allowed to tell the truth about anything. We have to we got to paint it a certain way. We can't handle anything. Didn't mean the Holocaust was a good thing. Didn't mean that it would have been preferable to learn some skills another way. I learned survival skills on the golf course. Okay, that's that's my preferred way. But yeah, and people can't handle that. They can't handle it.
I've always used the metaphor of Hawaii. Hawaii is nothing but volcanic ash. It's just violent, burning, toxins and all the beautiful flowers that are there. It's beautiful flowers grow from ashes.
Right.
And
it
doesn't, I'm not in favor of volcanoes.
Have we not heard of out of the ashes, the phoenix shall rise? Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. But no, inspirational stories don't matter. There was one guy, a black professor, and I forgot his name. He was commenting on Kamala Harris and basically saying, Abraham Lincoln wasn't the only person in the world who had agency. You act like everybody else is nothing but a victim. You can be a victim, but you can show courage and you could rise above it. But no, not it. No, we don't allow that because the liberals don't want you to have that. They want to patronize you. They want to feel sorry for you. Because it makes them feel good about themselves, and it's kind of sick. Really. So.
And it works for votes.
Oh, yeah, it sure does. It sure does. So I see in our schedule right here, and I'm sure it's something that I recommended to Chris, and it jogged my memory, refreshed my recollection. What is this Japan Yakuza that we were talking about, Chris? Oh, yes. How profound is Japan's demographic decline? A majority of Yakuza are over 50, and there are now more gangsters in their 70s than in their 20s. And, I was thinking, this is just, first of all, it's an excuse just to do your Ram joke. I don't know how to work it in, but you think Ram, he could be
Rahm Emanuel wanted to be the ambassador of Japan so he could feel tall.
Exactly. And, and he probably feels pretty young too, in Japan. So, I'm just thinking if these gangsters in Japan are getting too old, how do they do Godfather-like things? How do they, if they go into the gun for the go for the gun in the bathroom, can they reach that high? Are they going to strain their backs?
I had an incident where one of the neighbors didn't like my fireworks show on 4th of July, and he threatened me. He said that he goes, I'm not going to do it myself. I know some guys. And and I mentioned that to a friend of mine. She goes, oh, yeah, he knows some guys, but they're all the same age as him. So they're going to be, come here, you little runt, with the walker coming after me. If I catch up with you, you're in trouble, Buster.
It's a great story you just told. I was distracted by Chris flashing on the screen. Rahm Emanuel standing tall next to several Japanese people. Look, let the record show that Rahm is taller than everybody in that photo with him.
Yeah.
So, but I'm thinking, when like in The Godfather, he says, what do you do with the cannoli? You eat the cannoli. Well, what if it gives you acid reflux or something? You got to be really, and you don't have the Pepto-Bismol on hand. So, it would make the movie very difficult to make with everybody as old as Vito Corleone at the end of the movie. So,
and speaking of old
guys, how about Mitch McConnell? Nice segue there. So I didn't have the heart to actually watch the video of this. I guess can we show that right now? But
are we going to show? Are we going to show the whole thing? Because there's a lot.
How long did it
take? Going to
take?
be a lot of dead air. About 20 seconds. About 20 seconds of
it's
dead
20
air.
seconds.
We can actually talk over it.
But right, and apparently he came back after this, and Biden asked him how he was doing, and McConnell made a joke. He said he was sandbagged. Okay, that's a good one, but that's a little bit like saying the jerk store called and they ran out of you, because in the key moment he froze and may have had a stroke. I mean, are they speculating that he had a mini stroke at that time, or?
I'm not sure what after that fall, it took him a long time to recover from that fall. They said it was just a cracked rib, but he was gone.
No, which fall are we talking about? Did he face plant coming back from I heard that he had face planted like
second
a week or
fall.
So ago.
It was like months ago that he.
Oh no, there's something recent. I thought.
Yeah,
that happened as well. So yeah, I'm sorry about it. Here's the thing. So, and I saw this, the picture of him frozen, which is the best way to look at it. I mean, you get, you don't have to see the video which shows him just standing there. But I saw that yesterday on Twitter. And then I also saw some video, and I don't know, we have it. It's Mick Jagger, 80 years old yesterday. And I was thinking, before I saw the video of Mick Jagger, I was thinking, can he even try to get satisfaction anymore? All kinds of joke. Well, the guy is standing there. The guy is like fielding soccer balls. They're coming at him from all different directions, and he's giving headers, and he's kicking them sideways, forwards, and he's dancing at the same time. It was just amazing. And I was kind of hoping like he did like this for 20 seconds, and then they had to get the defibrillator for him. But he looked great for about 20 seconds, and it's Mick Jagger. And I'm thinking, here's Mitch McConnell, give him shelter. Yeah. But
same
Mick
age,
Jagger.
Same age as Mick Jagger, Mitch McConnell, Joe Biden, all the same age. And they say drugs are bad for you.
Right. I mean, the guy is 80 years old, and he looks like I remember when Mick Jagger,
and he had a youth that we all idolized,
right?
As far as the drugs, the women, the cigarettes, the booze.
Yeah. And guy goes to the London School of Economics. It's all it's all this big act for 6 or 7 decades or whatever. And he gets away with the whole thing. I remember when the Rolling Stones were in Chicago in like 1978 for their farewell tour at Soldier Field. And I actually did a parody, because this is what I did, about the White Sox of 1959 called Dumpin' Norm Cash. I mean, you're a Tiger fan. Yeah, I mean, I think
I remember Norm Cash.
Bit. Yeah, no, so it's called Dumpin' Norm Cash, about trading Norm Cash to the Tigers. And I did this parody, and I was working for WXRT at the time. The DJ interviewed Jagger and gave him a copy of the parody, the song. I mean, I don't think he ever listened to it or anything, but he thanked him. So I actually got a thank you from Mick Jagger in 1978, and that has carried me to this day. But kudos, as Michael Jordan would say to Mick Jagger, for maybe we should make him the minority leader in the Senate right now. It'd be kind of fun. Absolutely. All right, Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap.
Do you believe our government has made contact with intelligent extraterrestrials?
Something I can't discuss in public setting.
Okay, I can't ask when you think this occurred. If you believe we have crashed craft, stated earlier, do we have the bodies of the pilots who piloted this craft?
As I've stated publicly already in my News Nation interview, biologics came with some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Were they, I guess, human or non-human biologics?
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still on the program.
And was this documentary evidence, this video, photos, eyewitness? Like, how would that be determined?
The specific documentation I would have to talk to you in a skiff about.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap. Tim, do you believe in this?
Did you? it it could not human could mean a lot of things. I mean, right away we say, well, that's obviously aliens. They found alien remains. Not necessarily, because if you remember, the Russians used to launch monkeys and dogs.
Well, but they said non-biologic. I mean that
no, non-human biologics.
Non-human biologics. Oh, right.
Right, which means it's carbon-based life form, but not human. But it could have been a monkey. It could have been a dog.
Oh,
I mean, when I was a kid with Estes rockets, the X-ray was always just the right size for a frog.
Right. I mean, didn't somebody ask them that? What?
Well, of course not, because they wanted to. They figure if we can. They think that Trump supporters are all conspiracy nuts. So what they're doing is they're throwing them raw meat. They're saying, "Oh, Biden looks like he's in trouble. Oh, look over there, non-human biologics."
And by raw meat, is that meat from this world or from
non-human? It's non-human meat. So,
well, I have a different problem. I don't believe in the existence of humanity. I believe that everything is a figment of my imagination. It's kind of a solipsistic view, but there's some merit to it. So you don't buy that at all. I would think that you would. You'd believe in that for some reason.
I think space is so vast and the distances are so great that nobody has become intelligent enough to transverse that distance. There might be life elsewhere in the universe, but I don't think that anyone's come
well,
here.
I mean, if you can imagine, if you can imagine it, then it can exist. I mean, can't there be intelligent life
that kept the Soviet Union going for nearly a century?
Well, why can't you just traverse several galaxies if you're advanced? I mean, I don't see why that's a problem necessarily. It is for us. We're not there yet, but
well, because the nearest solar system is several light years away. So even if we invented light speed travel, which is probably impossible, it would take several years to get from there to here.
And so, what's the problem? What's the problem? Look,
the amount of energy it takes a skyscraper full of rocket fuel just to get out of the gravitational pull.
Did you know that there are some stars way out there? A teaspoonful of them weighs more than planet Earth. That's how dense some of those stars are. I know that that's not necessarily relevant here, but I was just trying to show that I know something. I will also quote a Ray Bradbury story. I forgot what it's called, but it's just to show you, the kind of technological progress that can be made. He did this story about these. We had launched a flight to Mars, I guess, or Jupiter, let's say. And we launched it, and it was going to take 100 years to get there. And so we had equipped, everybody with hyperbaric chambers and all that. And we were all set. And they went on their trip for 100 years. And 100 years later, they land on Jupiter and are greeted by a party from the United States that had launched 50 years later. So, I mean, that's... So these things are possible. Now, what's that a picture of that? I thought it looked like a cactus there. Is that the picture on our screen? Is that one of the UFOs that they saw in San Diego or something?
Yeah, it's probably a Soviet or Chinese spy plane, that technology that we haven't.
Well, since we just discovered these Chinese spy balloons a few months ago, and for all we know that these were spy balloons before. But yeah, it's kind of fun to believe in that.
Sure. I love science fiction, but it's I don't think it's a reality. It's the Voyager just launched 50 years ago, just left the solar system just a few weeks ago. That's
I didn't even know that.
And it's traveling faster than anything man-made except for that manhole cover that was on top of the nuclear silo. Do you know about this?
No, go ahead. We got time.
It was a nuclear test, and then some guy said, well, we better put this manhole cover on top of the silo before we blow it off. and that it disappeared. And they estimate that it probably blew. The physicists speculate that it was 130 miles per hour when it left the silo, and it probably blew out of the gravitational pull, out of the solar system, and that manhole cover is still traveling in space right now.
And Mike Ditka would say that George Hallis tossed that around like he tossed around nickels, that very manhole cover. Yeah, but you know, it's just a few years ago we didn't even have cell phones. And that's man.
Yeah, well, a few years ago, AT&T had monopoly, and you couldn't really experiment with phones. I mean,
right.
Once AT&T dropped the monopoly, I mean, pretty much all you had when AT&T had their monopoly, you had the desk, the Princess, and the wall phone.
No, right.
Available in 7 colors. And then as soon as they dropped their monopoly, we got answering machines, we got fax machines, we got cell phones, we got. Sure. I mean, it just.
No, are you familiar with the prudent investment rule? It used to be. This rule that was really against venture capital. It made the government would make unions or whatever invest in the safe things, the blue chip stocks, whatever. And so there was no experimentation. And I think I actually had a career because progress was retarded. I mean, I got into like radio and TV like in the late 70s and early 80s. This stuff would have happened a couple of decades before. You think Steve Jobs had to be a creature of the 80s and the 90s? There could have been one Steve Jobs from the 40s and the 50s if we hadn't been so conservative, quote unquote, in the way we invested. We're always trying to keep the Tucker Carlsons of the world are always trying to keep the women who work at the spinning jennies 16 hours a day employed there, and the bank tellers employed so that there are no ATMs, and there's all, and of course AI. I mean, you think there's going to be? I think we've talked about this. Are there AI comedians right now?
I actually tried to get AI Chat GPT. I asked them to write a comedy routine in the style of Tim Slagle. And I came back with, what's the deal with payphones? Huh? What do they make it? So Chat GPT, at least it wasn't terribly funny, but obviously Chat GPT knows I'm old and hack.
No, that's not bad. That's not bad. Anyway, we'll continue this discussion. When you say the Voyager just got out of the solar system, pardon my ignorance. What's outside of the solar system? I thought
nothing. It's going to run out of juice. It's got a nuclear.
Is it going to hit that wall like in the Truman Show where Jim Carrey just hits the wall? It's
going to run out of juice before it sees another thing. And that was the one, they had that gold plate on there. They have a record, and they show you how to play it, and they have the naked humans on it and the hydrogen atom. And so hopefully that centuries from now somebody will find it.
Was there like a time capsule with
that's what
Dwight
it was.
Eisenhower's medals and stuff like that?
It was a gold platter with music from the late 70s, which hopefully hopefully an alien does not figure out how to play it, because that'll definitely inspire him to attack us.
How did they decide which disco song to put on the Voyager? Was it Donna Summer, MacArthur Park? Because they figured they don't have to play it that many times, and because it's such a long record, as it traverses the entire universe.
At that point, wasn't the Super Bowl still being? Wasn't the halftime show still up with people at that point?
Or the new Christie Minstrels, or one of those.
So yeah, I'm pretty sure that the music is that disco would have been too edgy.
So I mean, it is possible that the life on another planet in another solar system will, as soon as it hears that record, it's just going to throw that Voyager right back at us. and frisbee that manhole cover all the way back to George Hallis's grave. All right. Well, so you didn't quite answer my question here, Mr. Science. What is beyond the solar system?
There's nothing. It's kind of like driving through South Dakota. Okay, you get Sioux Falls and then just nothing until you get to the Black Hills. Just hours and hours of nothing. So I mean, so there's nothing the solar for system, another light year. Another light year, you'll hit another solar system if you're pointed in the right direction.
Those are other galaxies are beyond the solar system, right? There are other galaxies.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, but it'll be thousands of years before it gets to another one of those solar systems.
You think that's kind of fundamental, and I didn't know that, or I forgot it. In the next segment, you're going to explain the quadratic equation when we go to math. Okay, so get ready for that. Put your thinking cap on. Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap.
We're following more breaking news for you tonight. Sources telling WGN Blackhawks principal owner Rocky Wirtz has died.
We're still waiting for more information to come into the newsroom. Rocky Wirtz, of course, not only the owner of the Chicago Blackhawks, but his family over the generations built up a huge empire that included Wirtz Beverage and, of course, Rocky Wirtz, co-owner of the United Center as well. So we will continue to learn more information and bring you updates as we get them.
Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap. So did Rocky Wirtz mean anything to you, Tim?
I think he had something to do with hockey, didn't
he? Exactly. See, I remember, I wanted to be a hockey announcer. I wanted to be Lloyd Pettit, the Blackhawk. Shot a goal. And when he would do the games, he would say, this game is authorized by Arthur M. Wirtz, James D. Norris, and Arthur M. Arthur M. Wirtz was the grandfather of Rocky Wirtz. Arthur M. Wirtz was the father of Bill Wirtz. Bill Wirtz was Rocky's father. And now Rocky has died. And if you don't think that makes me feel old, okay, because he was 70 years old. So, I mean, it's a contemporary of mine. Dan Proft and I interviewed him on WLS about almost 10 years ago after the Blackhawks had won the second or third Stanley Cup. And I think I was the only person remotely affiliated with Chicago sports who never got to see or touch the Stanley Cup. Okay, so I've seen it in the Hall of Fame in Toronto, but I never got to touch it, and everybody did because it was being carried around all over the place. So Rocky Wirtz did come to our studio, the WLS studio, and it was real nice, and he was very personable, but he didn't bring the Stanley Cup with him. So we took a styrofoam cup, and we wrote Stanley on it. And then we took a picture and we drank to the Blackhawks' success that way. So, I mean, it kind of hurts. And then the worst thing, and I even tweeted about this a few weeks ago. And I feel bad about it now. I even felt bad about it when I tweeted it. I was standing outside of the studio talking to Rocky Wirtz, like in between segments or something like that. And I mentioned to him that my best friend had been with him freshman year of college at Boston University. It was in something called the College of Basic Studies. And it was really for guys who hadn't done that well in high school, but, wanted to get into college.
Sure.
You know who was in the College
had some legacy connections.
Well, you know who else was in the College of Basic Studies? A guy named Howard Stern. That very same year,
wow.
Rocky Wirtz, Howard Stern, my best friend were in it. I knew somebody else who was in it. And my best friend, as soon as he could, he transferred to Michigan. Okay. As soon as he got the grades and everything. And I said to Rocky, I said, yeah, so my best friend was in school with you at Boston University. I didn't say College of Basic Studies. I said Boston University. He said, oh, no, I didn't go there. I went to Northwestern. And I said, oh, and I immediately realized, he's denying his past. And and I wondered, it made me feel like, now here's a guy who's a billionaire, but he was embarrassed about that, and because I always thought you can actually there's a certain amount of money, that'll make you happy and you won't ever feel bad about anything that ever happened in your life. So,
No,
but apparently not.
I think you ride to school on the short bus, you'll always be ashamed of it. That's
something. So anyway,
and from what I've heard about the Stanley Cup, from what I've heard about some of the things
Yeah.
that have been done with it, you're probably lucky that you never touched it.
Oh my God. I mean, gee whiz. I mean, I can't even imagine in the COVID era, post-COVID era, that anybody is even allowed to carry this. When they bring the cup out, they have this guy with a shock of white hair. You see the same guy every year, and he's got these white gloves on, and it's all pristine and everything. But I mean, he should be, in a hazmat suit based on what the Stanley Cup goes through for the entire year. Yeah, no, I agree. You don't really want to touch the Stanley Cup, but
and was it Rocky? I heard this. I did hear this on the news. Is that he put hockey back on television?
Well, here's the thing. So here's another great episode. So I was working at Channel 5 at the time, and Bill Wirtz dies, and Bob Verdi had called him Dollar Bill Wirtz. Okay, because Bill Wirtz felt that the Hawks had only 16,666 fans in the entire city, and every one of them came to all the home games of the Chicago Stadium, and he wasn't going to put the road games on TV. When I was a kid, my fondest memories of sports, and I was a sportscaster for a long time and everything, and got to do a lot of things, but my fondest memories are going with my father, not even to the Chicago Stadium or any ballpark. It's going to the Granada Theater on the north side to see a closed circuit broadcast of a Blackhawk home game in black and white. And 500 men are sitting there, and they stand for the national anthem. Why you have to stand in the theater for the national anthem at the game, and they're also smoking as well. So, but
in the theater,
well, I think like in the early '60s, I think you could do that. I think it was mandatory. I think they handed me a cigar too. So that was the legacy. And Bill Wirtz never wanted to put the home games. Everybody else in the universe had their home games on TV. He didn't put the home games on television, and I swear, the shovel of dirt number 1 had not gone into the grave of Bill Wirtz when Rocky announced, and we're going to put the home games on TV. So yay, hooray.
So the away games were on TV, but the home games were not.
The home games were not. So I'm on TV.
So what was on closed circuit? What was on closed circuit TV?
Well, this was the Stanley Cup. This is the Stanley Cup.
Oh, okay.
Stanley Cup. They did put the home games on closed circuit TV.
Oh, okay. So they were local. So they were local Stanley Cup games.
So I'm on TV. I'm a sportscaster on Channel 5 at this point, and I get and Bill Wirtz dies, and with me, the old adage. I changed it. To me, it's tragedy plus 0 equals comedy. So, I figure. So I say, well, Bill Wirtz died. I'm gonna, I'm sorry about it and everything, but Rocky's coming in, and Bill Wirtz had his old ways, and now we're gonna bring in the new things, and goodness knows he practically announced, at the gravesite that he was putting the home games on TV. Well, I wasn't reverent enough for news anchor Allison Rosati, whom I didn't really know that well at the time, but she's wonderful. After I did this like twice at the 5 o'clock and the 10 o'clock news, after the 10 o'clock show, she comes up to me and she says, "Bruce, the man just died." So I felt so awful that I basically never said another nasty thing on Channel 5 because I'm a total sap. But I remember that moment. But here's the thing. So Rocky dies now. And they say, and nobody's given him any space. I am, because I'm old and I'm not. But now, every obituary, it says, "Oh yeah, sure, he revitalized the Blackhawks and he won 3 Stanley Cups." But I don't know if you remember, there was this incident with this player named Kyle Beach who was sexually assaulted by the video coach, and it wound up, being a calamity. The president of the Hawks, John McDonough, took. I mean, basically, he was the scapegoat for this, maybe justifiably so. The former coach Joel Quenneville was knocked out of hockey. I mean, he won 3 Stanley Cups. So that was the stain on the Blackhawks. And so that's how they described, Rocky. They don't just say how great he was. It's got, but there's always that but there. But I think he was much beloved, and it hits me because it's like, I mean, I remember talking to him, and he grew up worshiping Bobby Hull. The difference between me and Rocky Wirtz, other than about $1 billion, is that, I mean, we both loved Bobby Hull. He got to skate with Bobby Hull. Okay, come over to the house, or the backyard, and we can ice skate together. But anyway, it's pretty sad. It's time moves on, and just to show how old I am, I don't have the heart to, you notice I'm in a very defensive posture for him, as opposed to the way I would have been, like for Bill Wirtz, or I guess that's what happens with old age. Give me some of that.
So
now, Tim. I'm nauseating myself. Yeah.
So is it still going to be run by Wirtz? Is there another Wirtz in line?
I think there's another Wirtz. I mean, it was 3 generations of Wirtzes who handled the team, and I really don't know about that. I have not heard anything about them selling the team. But yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So there you go.
A lot of times this generation, they don't want to be in their dad's business.
Right. It's too messy. In other death news, you ever hear of the quarterback Johnny Bruce's death report right here? Did you ever hear of the quarterback Johnny Lujack?
No.
Okay. Anyway, he's a famous quarterback from like the 40s and 50s, I guess, and he was the Heisman Trophy winner, Notre Dame legend.
1947, I see.
Yeah. Okay. And he was 98.
Uh-huh.
He just died. Well, you know who Larry Lujack is, right?
Yeah.
So Larry Lujack took his name from Johnny Lujack. Larry Lujack's name wasn't really Lujack, and Larry died about 10 years ago. So that's how long tenured Johnny Lujack was, because Larry, as a kid, took his name from Johnny Lujack, and usually you take your name from somebody who predeceases you, but so.
Huh. I did not know his real name was not Lujack.
No, it is not. I mean, doesn't that sound like a made-up name? I mean, it's a nice alliteration. I forgot what Larry's real name. I think Larry's real name is Luckman. Yes, Larry Luckman. He was actually named for Sid Luckman, but he preferred Lujack. No,
well, Luckman sounds like a good radio name. Maybe Saint Luckman, huh? Larry Saint Luckman.
Yeah, right. Well, there was this poor guy at on WLS, and I considered myself the heir to Uncle Lair at WLS, and I wound up being the morning show host at WLS after Larry Lujack, and I even got to talk to him a couple of times. Dan Propt and I both got to talk to him. Larry Lee Blankenberg was his name. Anyway, there was a guy.
Okay. Larry Lee sounds like a good radio name.
Well, that's good. That's real good. But you mention the Saint there. There was a guy who just had the job as morning show host on WLS a couple of jobs ago, a couple of DJs ago or hosts ago. And his name, I believe, was Bruce St. James. Mm-hmm. And everybody thought that was a fake radio name. This is how bad it was for this guy. He nobody listened to him at all for 2 years. It wasn't a fake name. It was his real name. But man. Nobody believed him, and nobody listened to him. So he left town. But anyway, Bruce Wolf, Tim Slagle on the Weekly Wrap.